Welcome everybody to the webinar, How to Automate Across GitLab and Jira Cloud. My name is John McKiernan. I'm the product marketer for the Jira software team focusing on automation. I'm joined by Matti Jensen, who is one of the engineering managers here in Jira, who helps ship these new triggers that we're going to be talking about today. I'm also particularly excited to join Brendan O'Leary, who's the senior DevOps evangelist for GitLab. He's a really nice guy, really smart guy, and he's going to be helping us to give a full 360 view of how you would automate from GitLab across the Jira Cloud, help your devs stay in focus mode, and help your admins sleep at night. Okay, without further ado, let's dive right in. So as ever, I'm not going to take very long with sort of PowerPoint or slides and showing you through. The real value that you're going to get from this webinar is through the product demo. I'll give you a brief overview about Jira automation for those who haven't used it before. If you haven't used it before, don't stress out, don't worry, it's all pretty intuitive. I think you'll pick it up really quickly. And I'm also going to be sending lots of resources in a follow-up email. Then I will hand it over to Brendan, and he is going to give a bit of an overview about what's new in GitLab before kicking us off with the first of 4 automation rules across GitLab and Jira. That will be the real need of this webinar. It's what will take up probably around 25 to 30 minutes. Lots and lots of value. We try to go through it at a nice slow pace, but again, we'll be sending the recording of this webinar after, along with a link to see these rules in static mode, so don't worry about that. Lastly, we'll have the live Q&A, so if you have questions for Brendan or Matt, fire them through now, or even for myself for that matter, and we'll answer them at the end. So before we dive into the product demo itself, it's probably a good chance to take a step backwards and ask, why should we be automating Jira? So we've already spoke to the fact that it keeps devs working in context and in deep focus mode, which I know is a beautiful thing to do, but it also saves time. So it's those little minutes and hours that you grab back that really make all of the difference to the productivity in your week. And not just productivity, but also your happiness. I know because I actually use these rules myself. The less sort of menial tasks you're doing, the happier you are. It extends Jira, so there's lots of things you can do with Jira automation that you can't do with Jira out of the box. So that's pretty awesome. You can just take it to a whole new level. Third is that it allows you to work smarter. So, I know you guys are using at least 2 tools, GitLab and Jira, and no doubt you're probably using, I don't know, maybe 6, 12 more. So as you add new tools and as you add new processes, things can get pretty complex. Automation allows you to sort of simplify that. It allows you to scale without adding too much complexity. And lastly, automation allows you to stay ahead. So typically the people who are automating now are kind of the innovators and the early adopters. So they're the people like you who are attending this webinar or watching the video afterwards, which means that you're keen on keeping your business ahead of the competition and also keeping yourself ahead of the game as well. So that's really the reasons for why you should be automating Jira at the moment. Now, when we shipped Jira automation into Jira Cloud natively, aside from the obvious, which was automating all of your tasks and processes in Jira, it also allowed you to connect your tools. So you could then automate across Slack or Microsoft Teams or Twilio. But in the last 6 months or so, or I suppose more recently than that, we've really been focusing on connecting your dev tools and integrating those. So that's what today is all about, automating across GitLab and Jira. And we're also going to be touching on things like Slack and Microsoft Teams and so on. But you can also connect pretty much any of your Git provided tools. More recently, again, in the past few weeks, actually, we've just shipped new support and new automation triggers for the likes of Circle CI, Jenkins, which is probably my favorite logo of all time, and Octopus Deploy. So really the goal is, whatever tool you're comfortable with working with, we just want to sort of help that workflow and not put up barriers. So Jira will always remain the central source of truth in the middle. You know that all the work in there is up to date and true and allow you to sort of ship the best projects that you possibly can and the best products for them. So just before I hand it over to Brendan, I'm going to go through this slide. If anybody has attended a webinar that I've hosted before, I apologize because I know I always show this slide, but it's a really good way of just showing at a very basic level how automation works. So it's just like Lego blocks. It's all just drag and drop. You just take these Lego blocks and you put them together in different ways to create automation rules. So at a very basic level, for us, our first Lego block is triggers. That's what kicks the rule off. It listens for an event in Jira or external, if this is what we're calling from GitLab today. Then we have conditions, which refines the rule. And lastly, we have actions. Nice animation there. And the actions are what executes the rule. So the guys today are going to go through this, and it'll make much more sense when you see it in context. But I want you to keep thinking about this as we go through. Just Lego blocks that you put together in different ways, and you can customize it however you like. So just to give you a bit of a feel, there's a ton of different triggers that you can use to automate any of your processes, really. The ones that we're going to be focusing on today are our DevOps triggers. So for us, that's going to be things like, branch created, pull request created, pull request merged. And there you can see our newest triggers as well, like deployment failed, deployment successful. So they're all there for you. It's available for every single cloud admin, and there's nothing to stop you going in once this webinar is finished and starting to create your own rules. Okay, that's enough from me. Let me hand it over to the brains and welcome Brendan. Over to you.
Thanks, John. As John mentioned, my name is Brendan O'Leary, and I'm a developer evangelist at GitLab. GitLab is a complete DevOps platform delivered as a single application. What that gives you is a single place to have all of the DevOps conversations, store the data about your DevOps lifecycle, a single permissions model, a single interface, and allows you to build governance and security directly into your team's DevOps solutions. In fact, in using a single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, you end up with DevOps best practices built in. This way, your developers can do what they do best. Create a merge request that has their changes, commit those changes, and automatically a CI pipeline will run, check the security of the application that they're changing, create review apps so that the designers and product teams and other stakeholders can review that app directly, allow for peer review and discussion directly in the merge request, allow you to implement all of the approvals required to make a change actually live in your production system, and then once that merge request is accepted, automatically close the issue that created it and configure your infrastructure, deploy the new application, and then monitor your app directly within GitLab. So we're going to start off by doing a little bit of work in GitLab. I'm going to be a developer coming in here to make a change that was requested. I'm just going to make that change as if I was the developer by opening up the IDE, and then we'll have Matt show us how that's going to work in Jira. So here we have our GitLab Web IDE. It's a complete in-browser IDE that allows you to make and review changes directly from your browser. So if I'm the developer and I've been tasked to come in here and add a new button to our application, I might go in and open this indexed file and, add a new button, right? So let's copy this one that already exists. We're going to make that change here. And from there, we can go ahead and commit that change directly to our Git repository. So if I click commit, you'll see that we're able to review all of the changes that we've made. In this case, we only have the one file that we've made a change for. And you see that we can't commit directly to the main branch, but we can create a new branch with our change. And in fact, we're going to reference the Jira issue number in the commit message, and we'll name the branch accordingly as well. So in this case, we were working on Jira issue car 20, and so we're going to reference that. This is going to say fixes car 20 by adding new button. And then we're going to say this is branch 20, car add button. So here we've referenced the Jira issue number directly in the commit message, and we're going to go ahead and say commit. Now, I've done my work there, and typically that would mean I have to go back into Jira as the developer, and switch and do my administrative work by saying, okay, now I'm going to go transition that issue, change the status, update it, put a comment on it so everyone knows what the status is. But the new automation engine means that you no longer need to leave GitLab to do that. I'm going to hand it over to Matt to show you how we can make that happen.
Thanks, Brendan. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew, and I'm an engineering manager on the DevOps automation project at Atlassian. The team I manage was responsible for delivering all the awesome DevOps triggers we're here to talk about. As Brendan mentioned, the problem we're trying to solve here is to save you and your team from constantly switching tools and context, and also providing comfort for the engineering managers out there who need to be confident that Jira is always up to date. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is ensure that Jira is connected to GitLab. You do this by using the GitLab integration app in the Jira Marketplace. So to find it, we go to our Apps menu. We click on Manage Your Apps. And we click on Find New Apps. And in the search box, we type in GitLab. And click on the GitLab for Jira integration app. And click on Get App. We'll get it now. That's going to take a few minutes to install the integration. Now that it's installed, we can go to Manage. Click on Get Started. To add our namespace, we add it to this field here, and we link it. Now GitLab will send events to Jira that we can use to automate our workflow. Now that we're receiving events from GitLab, we want to do something useful with them. Brendan has made a commit for his issue, so we're going to write an automation rule to automatically move his issue into in progress. To build the rule, click the automation icon on the board and select the branch, commit, or pull request trigger category. Choose the commit created trigger and save it. Add a condition by selecting new condition and use the issue fields condition. We only want this rule to execute if we're working on an issue that's not in the right state, so we're going to check that the status is equal to do. So if it's not in to do, this action will not execute. So that'll stop issues that are in done coming back to in progress, which we don't want. So we're going to save that and add a component action, which is to transition. We're going to set the issue status to in progress and save it. So now when a commit comes in, if it's in to do, we'll move it to in progress. This won't execute if it's already in progress or if it's in done or if it's in another state. So we would name our rule here and turn it on, but I've already got a rule that's been created with this pattern. So I'm going to bring that up and show you. Transition to in progress. You can see that it's the same thing, commit created. If it's in to do, then move it to in progress. So in the audit log, you can see a record of this action being executed. And if we have a look at this one here, we can see that when this commit came in, the issue was extracted correctly and the issue was transitioned to in progress. If we have a look at car 20, the actual issue, you can also see it on the history. So if you look at the history tab, you can see that automation for Jira transition the issue from to do to in progress. So now anytime any commit is created with an issue and it's in the to do status, it will transition it over to in progress. So there are all kinds of things we can do with this kind of rule pattern. I'm going to leave it simple for now and we'll move on to the next piece of work. So I'll pass back over to Brendan and GitLab to start us off with the next use case.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And hopefully you're beginning to see some of the potential here, right? The ability to automate some of these steps so the developer doesn't have to get outside of their flow. You know, another thing that developers often have to do, besides just updating Jira, might be, updating folks in Slack or in a Microsoft Teams room. And so let's say I was going to create a merge request. This is me requesting for this to be merged into the main branch of our project. So here we can see, we give it a title and a description. Maybe I assign it to a reviewer. There's two Brendan O'Leary's here just to be confusing. And I can go ahead and say submit merge request. And the merge request in GitLab is really where a lot of kind of rubber hits road. So this is where we're going to see the pipeline run, and we'll want to get approval from my manager to go ahead and run and merge this. And so I might want to go to Slack or somewhere else to do that. But what if we could just automate that with Jira? Matt, maybe you can take it away and show us that.
Thanks, Brendan. We'll start this off by creating a simple rule based on the pull request create trigger. So click on the lightning bolt to bring up the automation and use the branch commit or pull request automation category. Use the pull request created trigger, save it. Now, before we get to sending emails or Slack messages or anything like that, we need to know how to get access to the issue, or in this case, the pull request data. We do that using smart values, and I'll show you how they work right here. So let's add an action to our rule, and we'll search for log. We're going to use the log action here. We don't want to use log work. That's for logging. That's for time tracking. We just want to use the log action. So we're going to use that, and we're going to change this to issue.key. And if we save that, we're going to call this testing smart values. I'll turn it on. Now I'm going to create a merge request on GitLab. And if we look at the audit log, we should see that here it's running and it's successful. So in the log, the token has been replaced with the issue key. Using the log action, you can test the contents of your message or email without spamming your team, which, trust me, they will thank you for that later. Smart values are one of the coolest things about this automation engine. They allow you to access and manipulate almost any issue data from Jira within your automation rules. Now we have all the tools to implement our rule to properly handle our pull request create events. So let's go and create a rule. Use a lightning bolt. Use the same category. We'll use the pull request created trigger again, and we'll save it. I'm going to start off by using an action to comment on the issue. Comment on issue. And we'll set the body of the comment to be this. We'll tick this box so that the same action here can add the comments to the same ticket. Otherwise, it won't allow you to create duplicate comments. So we'll save that. Now we also want to handle the transition into in review state. So now we'll add a condition for that. We want to make sure that the status is equal to in progress. If we save that, now we can add an action to transition the issue into review. Save. Now this is where you'd publish it, but I've already got one that's completed. I'll go over to that now. You can see when a pull request comes in, we're going to automatically comment on the issue. If the status is in progress, then we're going to move it to review. So it doesn't matter what the status in, but we'll always get the comment, and we'll only transition it if it's in progress. So if I go and create a pull request now in the background and have a look at the audit log, you'll see what this looks like. And here we go, we've got our audit log here. So a pull request was created for car 19, and you can see that it's got the comment here, it's got the notation, and then we're going to have a look at the issue in a second, and it has transitioned it to in review. So we'll look at car 19. And here we go, we've got a comment on the issue with a link to the pull request, which we can click on and go through to GitLab to have a look at it. This here is the title of the pull request. Jira has extracted the issue key and replaced it with the link to the issue. Now it's time for our third rule. This time it kicks off when a pull request is merged. Over to you.
Great. Thanks again, Matt. So now I'm going to kind of change gears, put on my reviewer hat. So now I'm the person that's been assigned to review this code. Maybe I'm the tech lead for this project. So I come back to the merge requests. That's kind of where I spend my day, is in the merge requests that have been assigned to me. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this merge request and decide whether it's ready to go and get merged into the main branch of code. So here I can see all of the results of all the security scans that GitLab's done, the static code analysis and dynamic code analysis that's happened. We can see that there are no new vulnerabilities introduced into this code. And I can also review all the changes. So here I can see what changes have been made. We can see there was a change to make this test pass because we no longer have the generic welcome to Express, but we say that the new name of the ride, cool awesome ride. And then we can see the button that's being added here to this other file. So if I wanted to, I could make comments or make suggestions right here, right? I could say I want to suggest a change that's a little bit different than what we see here. Or let's say I think this is good to go and I don't need to make any comments. I can go ahead and say, merge this merge request. Now, once I've done that, of course, the pipeline will kick off to move it further down the line. But again, we might need folks to understand that, hey, this merge request has been merged. We might want to transition the issue again in Jira. So instead of me as the code reviewer having to go change gears and get into Jira to do that, I'd rather move on to the next merge request assigned to me. And so Matt's going to show us how we can make it easier with Jira automation so that I don't have to go do that administrative work. Matt?
Thanks again, Brendan. Now we'll create a simple rule to handle pull requests as they are merged. So let's create a new rule using the branch commit or pull request category again. This time we're going to use the pull request merge trigger and save it. And we'll add an action to transition the issue to done. And we'll name this to done. We'll name this rule, call it done. Now, whenever we get a pull request that's merged, the active issue will be transitioned to done. But this has a problem. The problem is if there are other still open pull requests for this issue, the issue will still be moved to done and the other pull requests may get lost. We can fix that using a condition. We'll do that now. Let's add a condition. We'll use JQL. The way this condition works is it will pass if the JQL result includes the active issue. So what we want to do is search for all issues that have no open pull requests. That means the rule will stop executing if there are still open pull requests for the currently active issue. We can do that with this query. Save that. So now, we should move that up to here, so it's in front of the transition. So now that the rule will fall out or stop executing based on this condition, if there are pull requests still open. Let's go one step further. We'll add an action to send an email to celebrate this merge. So we'll send it to all of the developers on our project, on our rollercoaster project, and we'll set the subject to a simple message. You can use smart values here, as you can see that's what I'm doing. And we do it very similar to the comment that we did in the other example. And we'll save that. Select it. There we go. Save it. All right. Back to you, Brendan, for our final rule.
Great. Thanks, Matt. So now the roller coaster is almost ready to go. It's kind of that crunch time. We're getting down to where we need to release, and issues can move a lot faster when you're in that kind of mode. So if we, as now the team lead, need to quickly make a change for a issue that's been escalated to me, I might go a lot faster than we saw before, right? I might go directly into the web IDE, make a change. So for instance, here we can see that there's a power off button, but no power on button. We're definitely going to need that so that the ride can get started. So we're going to go ahead and add a power on button, and now we might commit it directly into the main branch. As the reviewer, I have the ability to do that. And so in this case, I might then say, this fixes the next issue, car 21. And I'm going to go ahead and say commit. And that issue is fixed right away. And the pipeline is now running to move that next issue into production. But again, in that case, we're going to want a number of other things to happen. And Jira Automation is going to let us do that. Matt?
Thanks again, Brendan. I have a surprise for everyone. We're not going to close out with one or even two rules. We're going to close out with a set of three, and they're going to help manage your incidents. And as you can see from the screen, we're going to use a simple status page integration to show off the possibilities. As Brendan said, we don't want first responders spending their time updating Slack rooms or email lists or even status pages. We want them focused on the task at hand. I have three rules that I'm going to show you. I'm going to bring them up now in my automation management screen. These three rules will follow the life cycle of an incident issue in your workflow. You're going to see how you can keep a remote service completely in sync based entirely on the activity in or around Jira. These rules are somewhat simplified, but should give you a good taste of what's possible. Let's have a look at them in chronological order. First, you're going to create an incident. So let's have a look at that rule first. When an issue is created, if the issue type is an incident, then we're going to send a web request to status page. Let's have a closer look at that one. This URL here is the API for status page. I've got the authorization here, and it's a post. I'm going to send a custom body, which is going to include the issue summary. So we're going to create an issue, and it's going to have a description of the incident, and then that's going to be posted across to status page. I've selected this here so we can wait for a response, because what status page is going to do is going to return an incident ID for us. And as you can see, the next step is actually going to use that incident ID and set it in a field. So we get the webhook response, the body of the webhook response, and the ID is a field inside the JSON object that status page is returning. And we're going to set the incident ID field to that value. That way, later on, we can use the stored incident ID in the issue to update the incident in status page. So let's create an issue and find out how that works. So we're going to create an incident. This is a very serious incident. Popcorn has run out. And if we create that, we should see the issue here. Come over here and refresh status page. We now have an incident running. This is visible to our customers, directly as the outcome of our Jira activity. Now, this issue could have actually been created by another rule. Well, we could have a rule that's listening for Opsgenie events or listening for build failures or other development activity creating these issues. And if that issue is created, it doesn't matter how we did it manually, but it could have been created by another rule, then this execution will create the incident in status page. And as you can see that in the rule executions, we've got the create incident execution. So that's great. Let's go back to manage rules. Now we're going to work on that incident for a little while, and we're going to comment on the incident issue. So the rule is pretty basically the same thing. When an issue is commented on, if it's an incident, send a web request. This time we're sending a patch method, which is going to contain custom data that is going to create an update to the incident. And all we're going to do is set the body to the body of the comment. We don't need to wait for the response here. That's going to happen asynchronously. So let's go back to our issue. Popcorn has run out. And we'll add a comment on it. Investigating other sources of popcorn. Save that. So now that comment execution is going to run, and it should send a web request to status page, which it's done, and it's updated it. So again, this comment could be added manually like we did, but it could also be the result of another rule. Chaining them together, as I said, is very powerful. We go back to our rule executions in our manage rules, and we'll have a look at the next one. Following the life cycle of the incident after we've worked on it, we want to close it. So let's have a look at that. When we transition the issue to done, if the issue type is incident, then we'll send a patch request. This time we're just updating the status. Everything else is basically the same here as the comment. Just the status is being updated. So let's do that. Now that we've found our popcorn, we can close the incident off. All we need to do is actually just move it to done. Again, that could be the result of another rule, or we could do it manually. And if we come over here and refresh status page, we're back to green. So you're seeing how a single issue in Jira, which has been updated manually, but could also be updated by the rules, has created the life cycle of an incident or some information in a remote service. It's a very simple integration with a remote service, and in this case, it's status page. And that's the end of our 4 plus 2 bonus rules. Brendan and I will be around for some Q&A after John finishes it off. And so I'm going to hand it over to John now to close out with a song. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Matt. I really appreciate the time that both you and Brendan have put into that demo. I hope everybody gets real value from it. I know I did. I learned lots of things. So again, don't worry, I'm going to be sending the recording of this webinar to you after. So if you want to create these rules again, you can. And you'll also see a link in the console there to a community post where I have included all of these rules. So let us kick onwards. If you do want to start a GitLab free trial, the call out is there for you on the slide, or if you want to share it with anybody. And if you want to learn a little bit more about how automation works, I really recommend, if you haven't had enough of my voice already, going and watching our How to Get Started with Automation in Jira webinar. So I hosted that with Andreas, who is the co-creator of this automation engine. And it's really, really useful for you to learn the basics and how it all works. So I've included a bit.ly there, so you can just go to bit.ly automate Jira and you'll be able to see that webinar, and I've also included a link to it as well. Now lastly, I know Matt's touched on it a little bit, that global rules are where the real power is with automation. So instead of just automating across one project, you can do it across 2 or 3 or multiple or all of your projects, which is really the smartest way to scale. So that's one of the features that is available in the Jira Software Premium package. Now, again, just want to reiterate that every single Jira Cloud admin has unlimited single project automation rules. It's only when it comes to the global world where there's limitations for you to consider. Just in case you're not aware of the premium package, I've popped a few things up there on the screen so you can get a bit of an idea. So you have your global rules. You also have things like project archiving, unlimited storage, 24/7 support, admin insights. And we've also just released advanced roadmaps as well, which is a really awesome tool. I've included a link off to a bit more information about that too. So give it a go if you're fancying, I suppose, upgrading your Jira. Okay, that is enough from me. It's time for us to dive into questions and answers. So there's my fancy animation. Matt and Brendan, I hope you're ready. We've got a couple of questions already lined through. Let's start to take. Okay, just scanning through the questions here. I think it's time to bring both Matthew and Brendan back to play. So let's kick off with this question that's just popped through here from Matthew. In a status page example, how did you send the incident ID with the update and close request?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the question, John. Yeah, so the incident ID is stored as a field in the Jira issue, which means we can access it using smart values. So using the incident ID or issue.incident ID in the web request URL allowed us to pass it in as part of the request. And depending on the remote API requirements, you may want to do that in the URL, in the message body, or in the header. Check with the documentation of the remote API that you're using. In our case, we send it as part of the URL.
Perfect. Thank you, Matthew. And probably just good for me to put in there at the end as well and say, keep in mind that in the console I've linked off to all of the rules that we've run through. So you can see screenshots of them all, including a link to the smart values that we've used. So you can just copy and paste them. No need to go too crazy. Okay, while I have you on the line, Matthew, I'm going to go for one more. Again, it's about that last rule that you've run through. So in the status page rule, you sent a web request to status page. Can you do this with non-Atlassian products?
Yeah, you can. You can do that with any remote service that has an API. Check with their documentation.
Okay.
Sorry?
Sorry, I just lost you for a second, but you're back now.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, you can do that with any application that has a remote API. So you can use the send web request action in your rule to send a web request to any remote service. Have a look at their documentation. They're going to have requirements on how they want to be authenticated with. Some of them will use a header, and you'll need to put information in the header. Some of them will use it in the body. Some of it might have just a private URL. So have a look at their documentation and use the web request action to integrate with them.
Okay, nice. Let's jump over to Brendan. So we've got here from Samuel, who says, when I try to link GitLab, it says this feature is not available. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, yes. Yeah, so if you take a look at our documentation on the Jira integration, for the specific integration that brings in the Jira application that allows for like the automation integration that we just saw, that was introduced into GitLab Premium in GitLab 13.2. So you'll need to make sure that you're both up to date with your GitLab instance if you're running your own instance of GitLab. And then also you'll need either the premium tier for GitLab self-managed or the silver tier on gitlab.com in order for the integration to work.
Perfect. Thanks, Brendan. And again, while I have you, another one here from Stephen. Can this automation help with automated testing from GitLab?
Yes, I think it can. So, a number of things happen with automated testing within GitLab, and this automation could really bring a lot of like powerful workflows to your group. So, for instance, the approval and of merge requests, what happens when a pipeline passes or fails, what happens when testing either passes or fails in an automated way. Those things typically mean, to us humans that we have to do some special workflow thing. And so the ability to kind of automate that between GitLab and Jira, I think is extremely powerful, and it will allow for a lot of different workflows to support different kinds of teams.
Great. Okay, let's see. I've got a couple of questions here that I can answer quickly just so we can keep on ticking through. So Greg has asked, how can you stop one automation rule from setting off another, or what we call looping? Yeah, I know it's every admin's greatest fear. So rest assured we have some built-in smarts to make sure that doesn't happen. So first of all, by default, your rules, you have to tick a box to allow one rule to set off another rule. Secondly, we have loop detection. If I'm being honest, I have absolutely no idea how it works because the software architect who built it is a bit of a genius. So it basically makes sure that if rules start clicking off and hitting other rules and they shouldn't be, it stops, the rule fails and emails you and lets you know. And you can also keep a high overview of everything from the performance insights section of your automation engine. So it's not something to be afraid of. And another one for me, just what is the difference between a single project rule and a global rule? I think I covered that just there a few minutes ago, but pretty much what it sounds like. So a single project rule is an automation rule that runs in only one project. It can be created and edited by the project owner, so by the project admin, whereas a global rule is simply a rule that runs across more than one project. So that could be 2 or 3, or it could be 2 or 3,000. So that's really the difference. In the Jira Premium package, you get a lot more of those global rules as opposed to the standard or free packages. But again, keep in mind that every single user has unlimited single project automation rules. Okay, now let's get another one for Matthew. Matthew, do you have plans to integrate with Azure DevOps?
Yeah, thanks, John. There is an integration in the works at the moment with Azure DevOps, and you can find it on the marketplace. The Azure DevOps team are working on that at the moment, so feel free to go and install that integration. Once that integration is installed, your Jira Cloud instance will start receiving the build and commit information from Azure DevOps, and you can set up your automation.
Nice. Okay, and this one's a fairly easy one for you as well. So you mentioned Jenkins. How do I connect Jira with Jenkins? That's for you, Matthew.
Yeah, following the same pattern, there is an integration app on the marketplace to create the Jenkins integration. And once that's installed as well, you'll start getting the build events into your Jira Cloud instance. Again, you can just set up automation on those events as they come in.
Okay, perfect. I've got a question for you, Brendan, here. It's just come through from Mihai. I'm going to guess the pronunciation of your name, and I'm sorry if I got it very wrong. Does only one user need the GitLab Premium for integration, or all users need Premium on GitLab? The reason I ask is because the credentials being used for linking the two systems is based off one user, at least for self-hosted GitLab, which we're trialing now.
Sure, that's a great question. And yeah, so basically the answer is the namespace needs the license. So in the case of GitLab EE or a self-hosted GitLab instance, that would be a license on the instance. Or in the case of GitLab.com, it would be the group. That's the group level is where you are licensed for GitLab.com. So it's not necessarily the user that connects it, but is that namespace, rather the server or the group licensed with Premium.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's have a look at this question from Vendim. When we integrate GitLab with Jira, it expects the user to have access to the project. If we have to use a system user, what would be the permission to set up GitLabs for all commits? Maybe Matthew, would that be one for you?
Sorry, I was on mute. I think that's a Brendan question.
Okay, no worries. I'm throwing curveballs at you here. Would you know the answer to that one, Brendan? I'll read it out again. So when we integrate GitLab with Jira, it expects the user to have access to the project. If we have to use a system user, what would be the permission to set up in GitLabs for all commits?
Sure. That's a great one. I mean, I think that it expects the user to have access to the project is probably true. I don't know off the top of my head. I will send in the chat back the links to our documentation, which I'm looking at myself as well. I'm assuming the user needs to be a developer on the project in question, because that is, if you're a developer level access, then that that gives you access to the commit data, right? Which is what we need so that Jira understands like what's happening in the commits. But I'm sure that our documentation tells you exactly how to set up the permissions. And so I'll send that link as well.
Perfect, thanks. I'm sorry for throwing curveballs at you. Good question though. Okay, so I've got two I can take here. One from Michelle. Are the GitLab for Jira app features for Jira and GitLab on premises comparable to the cloud ones demoed today? So just being transparent as ever, Michelle, there is a difference. So an app for Jira Server called Automation for Jira Server, both free and a paid version. But they don't have these DevOps triggers that we've been showing today. That's only available in Jira Cloud Native at the moment. There isn't plans for on-premises that I know of, but if there is, we'll obviously let you know as soon as that happens. And again, the same question or a similar question from James as well. Is it only applicable to Jira Cloud? So yes, what you saw today, all these DevOps triggers, is only available in Jira Cloud currently. Though generally you can use automation for Jira, the app for server and data center if you go into the Atlassian marketplace. And maybe I'll take one more for myself, and then we'll have one last question to close out. So a question from Lauren. With the rule playground, will we have the ability to edit and download rules? So the rule playground, just a quick refresher, that's the big automation rule template library that I've included a link to, and we're building out significantly over the next few months. So at the first milestone, no, you won't be able to edit or download rules. You'll simply have to go in there, see the rules, and then copy them into your instance. But the second sort of milestone that we have set for that, probably early next year, you will be able to do that, which will be very, very handy indeed. So you can just download the rules and then install them into your own instance. Okay, so let's have a quick look. One last question has just come in, and we'll finish off with this. So Git tags. I did not see an automation rule for this in DevOps automation rules. Would this be created through webhooks from GitLab? Matthew or Brennan, who would be able to answer that one?
Yeah, I can start off with that. Thanks, John, and thanks for the question. Git tags are not part of the triggers that we have available at the moment, but you could send as part of the Git commit, you could base it on that, or you could send a webhook from GitLab over to Jira to trigger off an automation as well. So Brendan might want to add to that answer, but at the moment it's not part of the triggers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Both of the solutions you talked about make sense to me, Matthew. But yeah, maybe that's something we can consider in the future. Treating tags as a special special thing. Obviously, tags are just, in essence, commits that reference a previous commit hash. So you could make it happen, as Matthew was saying, with a webhook, but maybe there's, a use case there for making it more obvious or call it out specifically in the future.
Perfect. Sounds like a nice place for us to finish off with a bit more collaboration for the future. So let me just take a quick second to say thank you so much to everybody who has taken the time to attend. I know your days are busy, and I really appreciate it. And I also want to say a special thank you to Brendan and Matthew, who have put a lot of time into this, just to sort of show off these features. So thank you all. Go and enjoy your lunches and your days, and hopefully we'll see you at a webinar soon.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks all.